Okay, today we're going to talk about Protista and Fungi. This is chapters 28 and 31. The group Protista, consisting of a diverse group of organisms that many are unicellular, although there are some colonial and multicellular forms. They are, of course, eukaryotes, so they have complex cellular structure. Variety of types, again, photoautotrophs, heterotrophs, and mixotrophs, some organisms that both can make their own food and consume food. And because of the diversity, they come in a variety of types with various life cycles. An interesting thing evolutionarily about them is we've talked about this phenomenon, endosymbiosis, and the development of mitochondria and chloroplasts. Well, within the Protista, we see this phenomenon of serial endosymbiosis, in which there was a primary endosymbiotic event, essentially the formation of chloroplasts, these photosynthetic cyanobacteria being taken in to form chloroplasts. But then you had groups of protists that took in a second photosynthetic structure. And so you have some of these Protista that have various types of photosynthetic organelle inside them. One group being primarily the green algae, and then the red algae that have different types of pigments in their photosynthetic organelle. Now, this is sort of the traditional way of viewing the diversity of life. Bacteria, archaea, and then you had the Protista branching off from the archaebacteria. And we sometimes think of the plants and animals and fungi as being these distinct groups that are separate from the protists, and the protists making up a distinct kingdom. Well, this really is not recognized as the case anymore. And what systematists, the people who again study and classify living things, are starting to do is take eukaryotes and group them into these supergroups. And these are the 5 groups. You've got a group that essentially includes the many of the photosynthetic protists, like the green algae and the red algae, but it also includes plants, as you see in this eukaryotic supergroup. Then we have the uniconts, this other eukaryotic supergroup that consists of a lot of decomposing type Protista, the amoeba type Protista, but it also includes the fungi and the animals. And then you have these 3 other types of protists that we'll go through that have unique properties. So here's the excavata. These are a group that are characterized by having these grooves, these excavated grooves, if you will, and unique types of mitochondria, and having flagella. And there's one of the interesting types of mitochondria that one of them has. You can click on that link if you like. Then we have the chromalveolata, and these are a type of photosynthetic organism that is not an algae. These include these types known as the diatoms. You find them in marine system. They're important. The dead structures, the silicon-based structures of these diatoms are important parts of the sediments in certain parts of the ocean. Some of these are pathogenic. Potato blight, this is what struck Ireland and caused the Great Potato Famine. Malaria is an example of one of these pathogens as well. The chromalveolata also include the kelps, the brown algae in particular, which are different from the green algae. These are a complex, relatively complex types of protozoans that, or Protista, that are multicellular. The Rhizaria, a group that are often photosynthetic as well and have these thread-like pseudopodia that stick out, that allow them to stick onto objects. And then the Archaeplastida, and these are the protists that include red and green algae, and it's the supergroup that includes the plants, important photosynthetic organisms. And then you have the Uniconta, again, this group that include animals and fungi, but also these amoeba like Protista that have these extensions of their cells that allow them to move and to sort of surround and engulf things. The uniconts also include these molds, these slime molds, these decomposing type protists that have a unique lifestyle. Alright, the ecology of Protista. Many of them are mutualists and also parasites. This picture from an edition of Science shows these coral organisms. Corals are animals that have certain types of algae that often live in them and help with gaining nutrition. Then some are parasites. Pfisteria, there's this flesh-eating Protista these unfortunate fish have right here. Again, photosynthesis is a very important component of protists. Green algae, red algae, the brown algae, and the diatoms. Again, a variety of types of protists do photosynthesis. All right, and that is the protists. Quick look at them. Now, the fungi. Okay, so the fungi are these heterotrophic organisms that do not eat in the way that we eat. They do not digest their food, but they basically secrete enzymes and then absorb the nutrients that are broken down in the thing that they are eating, which is often something that's dead that they're decomposing, but they're also parasitic types that live off living things, and we'll see some mutualist types as well. So we're going to look at the fungi we've been culturing, and we'll see all these hyphae. And the hyphae are the basic unit of fungi, and they typically live, in the case of this one, in the ground. But the mushroom you're seeing above ground is basically a large mass of hyphae that have come up out of the ground and are forming a structure whose main job is to reproduce by producing spores. The bulk of the organism would be in the ground. In this case, it would most likely be a decomposing type of fungi that's feeding on the dead stuff in the ground. Some unique types of fungi as well. There's this predatory type that has these structures on its fungi that allows it to capture these nematodes, and then it'll feed on that nematode. Other types of fungi have hyphae who can form these structures that go into the cells of either a host type or a mutualist type relationship. These things that go inside are known as haustoria. Okay, some really important types of fungi we should be aware of. Mycorrhizae. Mycorrhizae are fungi that typically live in the ground. They live in association with the roots of plants, either on the outside of the plant for the most part, ectomycorrhiza, or inside the endomycorrhiza. And so what they do is they form a network that's connected to the root that allows the plant to absorb more water and nutrients from the soil. So they are very much a mutualism, whether they're ecto or endomycorrhiza. With the endomycorrhiza, they have these, again, these parts of their hyphae that literally go into the cells of the plant, the root in this case. And other than the ectomycorrhiza, they just surround it and kind of go in between the cells. But in each case, they allow the plant to absorb more water and nutrients. Basic fungal lifestyle, they can have asexual phases and sexual phases. With asexual, they basically have a mycelium is basically a cluster of hyphae, and the hyphae can produce these spores, and the spores germinate and just make more hyphae, and it just kind of makes this clonal propagation, this asexual reproduction of it. But they also have, some of them have a sexual phase, in which what happens is the hyphae from different fungal individuals, if you will, fuse, and they form what's called a heterokaryotic stage. And notice here in the green, these are all haploid. All the cells are haploid down here. Spores are haploid, the hyphae are haploid. But what happens when they're going through the sexual phase is the hyphae fuse. They form this heterokaryotic stage, which is a little unique in that you have the nuclei, the haploid nuclei from those two different individuals of fungi. But then later on, what happens is the nuclei fuse in this process called karyogamy, and there you have the diploid stage. Then they'll go through meiosis and make haploid spores. Unlike in an animal where you make haploid gametes, the spore is somewhat equivalent, you might say. But the spores don't fuse like gametes fuse. They just stay separate and then form a more massive hyphae and mycelium. But this step right here, the sexual step, allows you to produce spores that are different from the original parental strains, if you will, because of the process of meiosis, so generating a bit of diversity. All right, so as we saw in the Uniconta, the fungi are derived from a type of protist, as well as animals, and so again, this is that group that includes fungi and animals here, right here. So this would be part of the Uniconta over here on the upper part of this. And just a larger look again of life. Again, plants, animals, fungi, protist here. There's been both morphological and molecular evidence to suggest again that animals derived essentially from primitive types of fungi. And here are the groups of fungi. We'll just learn a little bit about them. The chytrids are essentially a type of protist that is fungus-like. But then these are the four groups of fungi. There's the mycorrhizal fungi, what are called the zygote fungi, the zygomycota, the ascomycota, and the basidiomycota. The zygomycota, the zygote-like, are interesting. I have a link here to Pilobolus, these type of fungi that form these structures that have a single spore on them that will then be shot off, shooting the spore to land somewhere else and germinate and form a massive hyphae somewhere else. The ascomycota, these are known as the cup fungi. They often form these cup-like structures. They also include a group called the morels, which is a very tasty, edible type of fungus you can find in the woods in the springtime. Basidiomycota, these are the, when you see a mushroom, what you're seeing is this group called the Basidiomycota. They form these, some of them form these mushrooms or toadstools that, again, the main part is to produce spores. They also have the shelf fungi that you see growing off trees in the woods, and what's happening is the hyphae are inside the wood of that tree and they're decomposing the tree from the inside out. And the tree may still be alive, but the inside of it is being consumed by the fungus. You might see these things sometimes. You see these on Estes Road in the springtime after a good rain. These toadstool, these fairy rings will pop up in which you have a ring of toadstools. And what happens is over time the ring gets larger and larger as the hyphae are sort of spreading through the lawn and consuming dead stuff inside the soil. So again, over years the ring gets larger and larger. Ecology of fungi, again, they're very important as decomposers with recycling materials from non-living things back into the soil and into the plants, etc. As we saw with mycorrhiza, they form symbiotic relationships with plants. We'll see some cases with algae and animals. So again, mycorrhizae extremely important to plants and helping them grow. The one on the right here has mycorrhizae and is growing quite well. The other one is not doing so well. Symbiotic relationships with animals. These leafcutter ants, what they do is they take their leaf parts back to their nest, and they have fungi that basically consume the plant, and then the ants eat the fungi. So these are basically ants who are farmers, you might say. Lichens, a symbiosis between algae and fungi. The fungi forms the main structure, but these photosynthetic protists, algae, and also some bacteria will live inside the fungal hyphae and carry out photosynthesis and provide nutrition for the fungus. There's also some that are pathogens. Plants in particular are susceptible to fungal pathogens. Fortunately, animals are not, although athlete's foot is an exception to that rule. Up close and personal, corn smut, rather nasty stuff. And of course, we have made extensive use of fungi for making foods, antibiotics, and as important in biotechnology, there you go, penicillin produced by a fungus that inhibits the growth of this staphylococcus.